Canada versus the World almost had it. After what most would consider a fairly mid-season of Drag Race UK versus the World, which lacked a fair bit of cast variety from around the world, some extremely lousy challenges, and general frustration that US queens had very recently participated in regular All-Stars previously, Canada's Drag Race versus the World had some huge shoes to step into. Most of the criticism I remember seeing at the time of UK versus the World was that it was pretty much just America versus UK, and the cast size was also pretty small. Size queens, am I right? So I, and I'm sure others, were looking forward to seeing how Canada would possibly mend the problems that UK created. I think it's a tough sell though. Bringing contestants in from around the globe who don't know each other very well, maybe incidentally from a quick tour stop or a meme from their season, maybe even a quick runway blurb that showed up on Instagram. And then you gather up these players, tell them to make snap decisions on someone that should stay or go, but the problem is that they don't know their fellow competition that well. They have no idea what they're capable of, and so if they stumble in something they were originally great at, it's almost worse than stumbling in something they already had trouble with. The mainline All-Stars queens don't know each other that well if they're from different seasons, but most of the US queens watch each other's seasons rather than the international ones. And first-hand knowledge makes a marked difference in how long a queen can last in the social element of Drag Race, where people are being asked to choose others to go home. I think Canada tried to accommodate for this by including friend groups within the cast, or at least some season familiarity. Soki and Raja have competed multiple times together, and their friendship would amplify the social game they played with not only each other, but also the room. Victoria and Vanity being from the same season, even if they maybe weren't that close and maybe didn't get to know each other that well, provides a level of familiarity that would have been missing if they had cast two queens from different seasons. The Canada pool of drag queens seems to be fairly small as is. Even in mainline seasons, they all seem fairly familiar with each other's work, so the social game was already kind of there for them. But then the only world representation is another former colony, via Anita Wiglet. Holland, Spain, France, Thailand, Italia, and the Philippines were all notably missing from this season, which was a major criticism of UK versus the World, that the world was not there. And on top of everything, the cast was incredibly small. Look who's a size queen now, I guess. 9 queens is fine for a capsule season like a versus the World or a pilot season like Italy, which was testing the waters of its palatability in the Italian TV market. But UK versus the World had already come under fire for its lack of world representation as well as its small size, and Canada fell right into the same trap. I've heard that visas for Canada are fairly difficult to acquire, so that could have been a major factor. But also, at the time, most of the international queens wanted to be judged by RuPaul, not a Ru girl like Brooke. I remember watching Envy Peru talk about being invited to Canada versus the World, and she said no because she wanted to be judged by Ru. However, after the backlash of Global All-Stars, I imagine that most of the international queens who've said no to Canada as well as others would be more than happy to jump into that series. In the same way that girls said yes to being judged by Pau for Slajon Royale, because Pau was not RuPaul. Where I think maybe a few years ago, some of those girls would have said no to other opportunities if Ru wasn't in the room. And there are just as many talks of girls who are willing to be judged by, say, Michelle Solo in Down Under, provided the working conditions are tolerable. I've seen posts of saying that they would do a Mexico or Spain versus the World, implying to me that the raging hard-on to be noticed by Ru Senpai is finally going down in the general public. But going back to Canada versus the World, this cast is pretty cute overall in my opinion. We generally have some good mix of earlier outs to finalists with some mid-outs, strong personalities and more mutable ones, performance, comedy, and look queens all being represented. I think the presence of Raja, Silky, and Isis dilute the integrity of the competition a bit, because there's no way in hell that someone will come back a third time or right after winning and not fight like hell to win this time. And the producers might help with that wherever they could. So stacking such hard hitters against earlier outs like Stephanie and Anita make it clear who had a chance and who didn't, taking a lot of the surprise out of this season. But beyond the down-low frustrating pick of 2 girls who just came off of All Stars 6 was that inclusion of Isis Couture. Isis was called among other global winners like Carmen Farala, NB Peru, and Electra Bionic. I'm curious if Priyanka and Sharon were also called and said no, but that inclusion of a winner amongst non-winners I personally think was a mistake. Beyond already done having hers, having a winner massively unbalances a season. Either they'll be solid as hell in the competition like Isis was, or they'll get a handhold to the finale like BB had in All Stars 3, bulldozing everyone along the way, fair or not. I think a winner roulette in All Stars only works if you have a few of them, and a theme that season is winners versus first timers. After the second and third winner both said no, the concept of including a winner probably should have been scrapped, especially since Isis had quite literally just finished her season and was still touring. In my opinion, it tarnishes her win if she comes in and doesn't win. She did the best thing for herself long term because she quit midway through, locking in fan perception that she could have won or that she deserved a win, so now she needs to go back in their mind so that she can get a proper all-winners season. Isis's spot could have been swapped for Kiara or Tainomi from season 1 to balance out the season pool of Rita being solo from her season, and less season 2 representation where we had 3 players. And then more of the world should have also been included. Bring in Art Simone or Coco Jumbo to buff out Anita's presence there. And then lock in a few girls from Holland or Thailand to fill out more spots. Hell, they could have brought in 14 queens as a total package and really made this a phenomenal season. Bring in one more girl from Down Under, 2 from Thailand, and 2 from Holland. Or 2 from España who could speak English, and 2 from Thailand. Maybe the budget didn't allow for so many queens and so many episodes. Maybe nobody wanted to take a risk on Brooke or the cast star power like that to bring in enough global audience to warrant an entire season when the main Canada seasons were typically only 8 or 9 episodes at max. But I think it was a major missed opportunity to not feature more of the world when they had the chance. I think what Canada's Drag Race does exceptionally well is theming. Their challenges were great this season. Polished girl groups with one of the most fun songs of the English franchises since UK Hun, in my opinion. A very cool ball concept revolving around weather, one of the better written acting challenges in Spy Queens, and a kick-ass finale format, blending both a classic photo challenge with a lip-sync Lollapalooza. Their runway themes are always a banger as well. Y2Gay 2000s Club Kids had so much potential if there was the right casting. Plaid Girls Club and Celestial Bodies were such amazing ideas had they been executed exceptionally well. I think at the time, no one really invested into this season, and that shows on the runway. And I think with good reason. There was probably no stipend even if there should have been, and none of them knew what the reach would be if they invested a lot into Canada's Drag Race. I think Isis and Victoria clearly invested the most into their packages, hoping that bookings afterwards would more than make up for what they spent. But the others didn't seem to put much thought into what they brought to the runway. We see a massive shift by season 2 because either there was a stipend or the queens saw the show's potential reach and therefore invested into it. But for this first season, the runways didn't live up to expectations. I know it seems like I'm only complaining, but I genuinely love this season. The casting is phenomenal because we see so many incredible growth points from original seasons. Raja and Silky have the most beautiful arc together as their drag race journey has always involved each other. Seeing their bond and love for each other as they vie for the crown is special to watch. Victoria and Vanity finally get their flowers after Victoria injured herself early in UK 3, and then Vanity spent most of her UK run in the bottom. The expectations they had for themselves on season 3 of UK were fully realized here. And Rita was able to connect all her personality with her glam and fashion, showing a massive glow up from her original run. Unfortunately, queens like Anita and Kendall are left a bit in the dust, but in a 6-episode season, I suppose there's only so much you can do when you're the early outs. I've mentioned everyone except for Stephanie because I think her run was fine. She didn't make a huge impact, she didn't make a huge mark, but I don't think it was catastrophic either. This season's biggest downfall is its length and lack of bigger casting swings. Because I think the meat of this season, the challenges and its editing are solid. Canada's Drag Race is such a special season because it holds space for real-life conversations and highlights those conversations in a unique and sensitive manner. In episode 1, the girls talk about racism in the club scene and how black queens are often just referred to as someone else's name who also happens to be black. This sentiment gets echoed into Vanity's lyrics of Bonjour Hi, and the conversation is treated with dignity in the edit. The room dives into mental health when Isis needs to leave, something the mainline season sometimes avoids when things are getting tough. And when it comes to meaningful portrayals of its casting, Canada does it the best. It all just happens at such breakneck speeds because episode 1 is girl groups and episode 6 is the finale. There's very little time to establish proper storylines, so the edit latches onto the finalists, Raja and Silky, and features them as the main players each week, with Victoria as a major narrator of the season. This franchise doesn't manufacture fights in the same way that Rue and co love to do. They aren't asked to rank each other on who stinks or is hairy or who might go home next. They just compete. So the dramatics and theatrics of making TV are left behind in this franchise. And I love to see that. I think it is so respectful towards the overall cast. We get to see pretty much the queen's best moments, which I love with my entire soul, but that doesn't create the most dynamic television, which is not very appealing to an international audience. Since this season is so phenomenal at highlighting queens' growth and personal strengths, 3 to 6 more queens to buff out this cast would have greatly benefited it. It was so close to being one of the all-time bests, but falls short by just a few wig hairs. And again, don't get me wrong, I think this season is spectacular in its own way, but I don't believe it touched the souls of the globe because it's missing that extra punch. It needed something or someone to draw in more eyeballs. Allegedly, Katya was also called for this season, and I wonder if someone of her star power would have drawn in more people to watch. It maybe needed someone like a Vanjie or a Roxy to get those US audiences connected to it. Not that Raja and Silky didn't have that star power, but I think the fear at the time was that they had too many chances and they didn't have the same clout as some others in the US sphere had. They needed some bigger players from down under besides Anita, such as Art perhaps, and they needed just a bit more time, just a few more episodes to make a bigger splash. I think Canada has the sauce, the right sauce. It just doesn't blend that with the pasta right. It didn't have the pull at the time of this season to make bigger swings. It was almost there. It was so close. And I hope that someday the producers will take a chance with this series and really give us the Canada versus the world that we deserve. One that takes all of the high points of this incredible season, mends some of the mistakes, buffs out the casting, and gives us the most perfect season that could exist. One that even blows UK versus the World Season 2 out of the water, which is arguably one of the better versus the World seasons because it is so large and has such a great cast pull of not only diversity but also star power. Look at those queens like Marina and Hannah, Tia. These are queens that people were looking forward to seeing again. They wanted to know what they were going to do another time around. They loved their star power the first time, and so they got excited for their run. Where Canada versus the World Season 1 is a lot about redemption. It's about queens who needed another chance to come back and prove that their bad moments were not the thing that defined them. And I think that All-Stars archetype was a little tired at the time, because those were the themes of not only UK versus the world, but also All-Stars 5 and 6. People at the time wanted to see some incredible star power, which is why they loved All-Stars 7 so much. It was just hard hitters coming in and giving an All-Stars level performance. It's why people are enjoying Slation Royale so much now. They get to see these strong players from the Philippines really compete again and show why they were so good the first time. And I think fans in general want to see that. They want an All-Stars, not necessarily a redemption season. And if they do want a redemption season, they want it packed between hard-hitting seasons, so it makes the highs of that feel that much better. Again, I think Canada's Drag Race has it. I think their production team does a great job with editing and portrayal of its cast. I think they do a great job at allowing real stories to occur. And I think what they do on the runway and in the challenges are next level. They just need to take bigger risks in the future. And I think they can do that. Thank you for watching, and I will see y'all on the flip.